Hey guys, what's up? Doing a pretty analog video here today, but I got to do some cleaning up around the house, and I wanted to, I guess, take some time today to talk about my Game Informer magazine collection. This was a bit of an investment strategy I had back in middle school. Kind of like how Crazy Bones, Digimon, or MetaZoo cards would ultimately take over Pokemon cards and become the next hot thing to collect and trade. Well, back in the day, this was mine as a kid, and I thought that someday this big stack of gaming magazines would at least be worth something now, but I don't know, I digress. Anyways, I have to get rid of them, but I did want to look back at the good times with Game Informer and I guess kind of reminisce about an era of gaming that no longer exists. And this is kind of how we used to hear about the newest stuff coming out. This is essentially our gateway back in the day of what was on the horizon, or how the newest Halo or GTA whatever reviewed back in the day. This is also a really great place to kind of see what was going on within the industry itself, and it was also just a great community overall. A lot of people definitely got online with the Game Informer forums, and back in the day, that's kind of how it was. Audiences were segmented into separate forums. The conversation was kind of driven online, and really the conversation looks totally different, but sometimes the same at times in terms of what we talk about, what we thought of the industry, where things were going, and what was important at the time. And this video isn't really to sit here and talk about what could have been or what should have been. I just want to sit back and reminisce and look through this old stack of magazines. One thing you'll notice right off the bat is that the cover for these were just unbelievably good. I loved. My favorite thing about Game Informer was always the covers and how it really just encapsulated the entire game with just this sleek art style, and even just kind of alluded to what you would be doing and overall themes, and it would just get you super pumped to see what was inside the issue. The artwork was always just amazing, and honestly a lot of it was original stuff too. I don't know where you could find even this God of War photo or this Alien Isolation example here. One that I really loved was the LA Noire one. That one was just really encapsulated the vibe of that game, and obviously the South Park one was kind of cool. This is kind of when they made the entire magazine, the entire cover itself, and added a little background to it on the back end of the actual magazine itself. Other than that, I just wanted to kind of reminisce a little bit. I had a lot of these. I had a huge stack. I probably had about, I want to say 50 magazines, 50 issues of Game Informer. And I kind of want to talk about what kind of separates gaming magazines from today's day and age. Everything now is just a YouTuber or a guy who gets online. And granted, there are still the IGNs in some teams, and even Game Informer still exists to a degree. But back then, the community was a lot more in person. Everything was a lot less digital than it is nowadays. And on top of that, you really got the opinion of a wide variety of people. And this was also at a time when, they weren't going then on to Twitter and then arguing with you. You really just got to kind of see the little bits and pieces of all the golden nuggets, all the really important stuff that was making up the gaming industry, instead of, having to read through and watch hours and hours of filler bullshit that exists online today, like this YouTube channel. But yeah, Game Informer was really just about a big community, and ultimately, though, let's be real, Game Informer wanted you to buy shit. That was also the big selling point with Game Informer. And a lot of the shit that they sold was really crazy, just really stupid stuff. But I loved it either way. I'm not gonna lie, the December issues where you got to see all the cool action figures and stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, that Tauntaun sleeping bag was really interesting to middle school old me. But anyways, the first thing I do want to talk about specifically with Game Informer, though, is gonna have to be the ads. My favorite thing with old magazines is just looking through the ads. What the fuck was this? This was a show that was on TV. This dog here, I thought the Metal Saga dog looked pretty sick. And this Hitman cover was also pretty cool too. One thing that was cool about the ads is they really gave you a sense and vibe of what the game was ultimately going to be like. And at the time too, we were still playing EA Air Hockey on the phone. I really wonder whatever happened to that custom chopper. Who won that? Back in the day too, we also had to buy phone ringtones and phone backgrounds and stuff. Family Guy was still a big thing, I guess. Here's this classic Gears of War one. That one was, I accompanied the first trailer that everyone really seems to remember and love so much. It's interesting to see where Gears is as a franchise now as well. This one was weird. This alien computer one that just said breed. I don't know what they were on back in the day with computers, I guess. But yeah, the big thing with Game Informer or just reading about video game stuff back in the day was just trying to figure out where the industry was going. What was the next route, the next big evolution, the next big thing that was going to take the industry by storm. And it's kind of crazy how much the industry has evolved since then. Reading these old magazines are very funny. Remember when like the Dragon Ball Z movie was coming out? God, we haven't learned anything. But it was kind of cool too, because you also got to see the backside of the the industry as well, like some of the pro gamers. Obviously, the discussions, the top 10 lists, were also very interesting. Kind of let you learn more about other games that existed, and ultimately they all kind of fit the theme of the magazine that they were kind of going for as well. But looking at the game, the newest, hottest thing that was coming out, and just getting those screenshots, getting that like kind of sneak preview image of what the game was all about, what it looked like, or and a lot of times too, like these photos you're seeing, like this Dead Rising one, where it's like early stuff too. Like these are like screenshots that are lost to time, and you really got to kind of get a sense of how the game was being built, the people behind it and everything, with these interviews, with these previews and everything. And at times too, like companies and these businesses would get really braggadocious about the technology, like this Assassin's Creed one. I mean, like, dude, back in the day, that game was unreal when it came out. Like the scale of it, the detail, and it was kind of cool just reading about that. And you got really kind of a really deep insider information about it. Nowadays, everything just tends to be very, surface level in terms of its understanding of the stuff. But back then, journalists and the actual game devs would sit down and talk and like share information and, kind of ultimately paint a picture of what they were trying to get across. I will admit though, it does kind of sting a bit when you see some of these older games that just never came out or just never came to fruition. I mean, geez, man, those rabbits for Rayman 4. If only Rayman knew. If only I could go back in time and warn Rayman about those rabbits. Back then, too, we used to think that this rock band genre or Guitar Hero genre was like the future. You have no idea. I remember the craze for Guitar Hero and like the rock band games was just so nuts. I genuinely thought that would be a franchise that would exist for years and years to come. But what was also cool too, like reading through this one specifically, which was about the Wii games that were actually healthy or beneficial for your health. Like they kind of reviewed them from the sense of, are these actually good forms of exercising or not? This Portal one though was so cool because, I mean, again, you're seeing a lot of this early concept art, and I mean, with Valve games specifically, that's a rarity. Getting access to that and seeing this before the game was coming out, or even just these screenshots as a whole, I mean, are just a cool time capsule for a bygone era. And the cover was also sick as shit too. I love the double side to it. Here's this E3 bingo one. I thought that was pretty funny. This is essentially, what everyone was thinking E3 would be about. Remember E3? God. But what was cool too with Game Informer was like the information that it provided. A lot of the stuff and like surveys that they did with the audience at times was cool, or when they would kind of break down the sales numbers or trends that were, being seen throughout the industry itself at large. But, let's be real. I mean, Game Informer was obviously biased at times too. How could you not? It's a magazine, and you're never going to get the most perfect, clean slate opinion and understanding of the industry. But it's hard to deny that the people that wrote for Game Informer and also help, customize and make artwork for the magazine itself and even like edit and build it out in InDesign didn't love video games. It's cool to see like the perspective that these people had at the time. And on top of that, it's just interesting to see like how much of the gaming industry was still learning and still going through those growing pains. It's almost as if it like never stops, but the growing pains that they went through back then were just so different from what we have nowadays. Well, let's get to the meat and potatoes, the reviews that Game Informer had. I always felt that they were really transparent about what they really qualified a good score for certain games. And overall, I think the actual scoring for some of the games that they picked was pretty accurate. I do appreciate that at times they even had like a second opinion section for certain games that reviewed really well or maybe reviewed fairly poorly. Overall, though, this was a print magazine, so they really couldn't go into too much depth and detail about what made certain games great or, which ones were really worth your time. More, though, I was like interested in the pictures and also the variety of games that they reviewed. It was kind of crazy how each issue Game Informer had like, I don't know, more than a dozen reviews at a certain time, especially during the holiday season when like, games would be coming out left and right and they'd just be handing out killer scores over and above all, just across the board. But they reviewed pretty much everything. I always appreciated the Game Informer reviews, but I'm not gonna lie, younger me always just like looked at the number and called it a day. I wish I kind of went back and maybe looked at some of these. I don't know if I agree with that Halo 4 one, for example. And that Dishonored, I think, could probably be a little bit higher, but I don't know. At that point, we're just getting a little bit too in the nitty gritty on things that don't really matter. Some of my favorite parts of the Game Informer issue, though, was at the very end where they would quiz you on, video game like fun facts and logic. And this is also, I think, where Game Informer really shined as a company. It really shined as a publication specifically because they were so damn funny. It was unbelievable how Game Informer writers at times just really like push the boundaries for pissing off not only gamers in general, but the actual industry itself. One very famous or infamous part of their magazine that they used to do, I don't know if they still do it anymore, was the Sacred Cow barbecues. And that was essentially where they would review and talk about games that were obviously really great, but then would just get really nitty gritty and nitpick and bring up like annoying aspects of each of these games. And people used to get so mad at these. There was a lot of like fan mail that was like ridiculously heated. They also kind of then changed it to Game Enforcer, where they kind of just spoofed themselves a little bit. But these were so funny, I remember just like cracking up at the idea of them talking about the safety first of the Wii, or them talking about the PlayStation Home. I always thought that the one where they talked about Little Big Planet giving you like the game engine tools to make your own games straight up was super funny. If you're going to check out Game Informer on the website, which you can actually read through all these classic magazines on their website, I always appreciated that piece that Game Informer has. But if you want to read through these ones, I definitely recommend the Game Enforcer ones or the Sacred Cow issues. Those were super hilarious. But my favorite issue, though, the one that I remember really looking into over and over and over again and really like dove into, was the issue 200. And that was when they listed the top 200 games of all time. And they got really like specific about the data and the metrics behind these, and even asked the actual writers for Game Informer what their own specific top 10 list would be. This is a pretty definitive list, I'm not gonna lie. They put Zelda at number 1, rightfully so, but they also put in some like nice sleeper hits here. I thought it was interesting that Miss Pac-Man ranked higher than actual Pac-Man. We got Metal Gear Solid here. I always appreciated also that they included Borderlands, especially at a time when Borderlands was fairly new. So it was kind of impressive to see that they had put a fairly new game in this list here. But it was just kind of neat to see like the overall history. And, again, looking back on this now, you kind of get a sense of like, damn, I wonder where the industry is going to go from here and everything. But let's be honest, we're all curious about that one game, the one I play on this channel all the time, right? We're all looking for Team Fortress 2. So, that's one of Valve's best games ever. And, when did this issue come out? I want to say like 2010 something, but let's go look for it. Where's Team Fortress 2? Where is it? All right, it's probably, I guess, not in the top 30. No big deal. No big deal, I guess, right? It's somewhere here, though. Like, they have to have put Team Fortress in here. Team Fortress 2 specifically. That game had come out at this point. I don't really remember how many updates had been out at that point. I don't even know if hats were a thing yet. Where is it? Where's Team...